Chapter 25. Annie called the police, and they came in droves. We waited in the lobby as her captain and several members of the Fredericksburg police station showed up, as well as about a dozen sheriff's deputies. Annie's captain and fellow cops were all happy to see her alive. They showed up first, followed by the sheriff's deputies a few minutes later. One of the deputies said this was not the jurisdiction of the Fredericksburg Police Department. "Don't you lecture me about jurisdiction," the captain said. "One of my officers was kidnapped. That makes it my jurisdiction." The deputy shut up after that. A couple of the officers and a couple of deputies remained downstairs while everyone else filtered up to the third floor. We all got our stories straight and said that Gabby and the other two men broke into Annie's apartment and kidnapped her to get me to give up evidence against them. I said I had a video of them using their device on me, but I gave them my only copy to get Annie back, and they erased it. I didn't tell them what the device was capable of because they would not have believed it. I just said it was able to scramble people's memories. Speaking as Scott Parker, Dad said the machine was supposed to help people remember, but it didn't work as intended. He said the 3 dead people there and the one at Annie's home were employees who wanted to steal and sell the device. He speculated that it would be worth a lot of money to many unscrupulous people. He said he planned on destroying it and the plans for it to keep it out of the hands of bad people. Explaining how 3 people ended up dead was a little more complicated. I wanted to keep Alex out of it, so I said they were about to scramble Annie's brain when Dr. Carr elbowed the guy with a gun at her side. I said it distracted everyone enough for me to take them out. I certainly didn't want to say I shot them in the dark. They would have thought I was reckless and crazy. Desperate and lucky would be better words. We all waited in the lobby for the investigation to finish. Fortunately, there were several comfortable chairs for us to sit in. After a while, Annie's captain came down and sat next to her. He put his hand on her arm and said, "I'm happy that you're okay. We were all very concerned. I know it must have been a traumatic experience, and I want you to take your time returning to work." "Thank you, sir," Annie said. "How's Bruno? Have you heard?" "He has a bit of recovering to do," he said, "but the vet thinks he will get through it okay. I'm not sure if he will be capable of police work again." "I think he'll surprise you," she said. "I look forward to being surprised," he said. He looked at me and said, "I also want to thank you for what you did. You did what needed to be done to get Annie back safely. I respect you for that, but I must say that I don't buy that cockamamie story you all told. You guys are lucky this is not my jurisdiction." With that, he got up and walked away. I looked at Annie and said, "I really like your boss." She just nodded in agreement. It was midnight when the last deputy left. Sarah said she needed to get some sleep and asked if we could use a ride back to my car. I accepted, so she dropped us off at the Carrabba's parking lot. Dad sat in the back, and Annie got in the front with me. I turned to look at Dad and said, "You know, you are a billionaire now. I'm sure you have a huge house around here somewhere. Do you want us to find it?" "Perhaps tomorrow," he said. "Right now, I want to spend some time with my second favorite son and his beautiful fiancée." "You're funny, Dad," I said. "That's a good one." When we got to Annie's apartment, I asked Dad if he had Parker's phone on him. He checked his pockets and pulled out a smartphone. He handed it to me. It unlocked using a fingerprint, so I handed it back to Dad and said, "Put your finger on the scanner." He touched the bottom of the phone, and it unlocked. He handed it back to me, and I opened the phone app. I looked through his contacts and found General Rafferty's number. "I know it's late," I said, "but we need to call General Rafferty." I then explained to Dad how the general was involved and that he was now Parker, and his wife was probably Gabriella. "This is enough to make a person's head spin," he said. "I know," I said, "but we need to tell him there was trouble tonight, and he should hold off before getting the president involved. Are you okay with talking to him?" "Sure. Give me the phone." I handed him the phone. He hit dial and waited. I put my ear close so I could hear. After 15 seconds, Rafferty answered and said, "It's after midnight. What is it?" "I'm sorry to wake you, but there's been an incident," Dad said. "Gabby's been killed, along with 3 of our men." Shit, he said. How did you let this happen? I didn't let anything happen, Dad said. I'm calling because we need to put the brakes on this thing with the president until things cool down. No, Rafferty said. We've come too far to stop now. The thought of immortality has him licking his chops. We need to strike now while we have the chance. I won't debate you on this, Dad said. Give things a week to cool down, then we'll get him. He hung up without waiting for a reply. We were all tired, so we gave Dad the second bedroom and went to bed. I got in bed with Annie, put my arm around her, and immediately dozed off. I woke up before 7 a.m. The room was bright, and I tried to go back to sleep but couldn't, so I got out of bed. I put my clothes on and went to the kitchen to make coffee. Dad was already sitting at the dining room table, drinking coffee. I made a pot. I assumed you would want some, he said. You assumed right, I said as I poured myself a cup. I brought it over to the table and sat across from Dad. We are quite the pair, he said. Father and son, and not even related. Family is not defined by blood, I said. I needed to tell him what happened to him, but I was reluctant. Finally, I said, Dad, I have some unpleasant news. He took a sip of his coffee, put his cup down, and said, Are you going to tell me that the real me is dead? How did you know? I didn't. The fact that the version of me that you have is 5 years old sort of gave it away. How long have I been gone? Not long, I said. The dead woman you saw yesterday shot you. The hard drive with your memories was in your safe deposit box. You destroyed all the data at Parker's lab, so I assume you had that at your house since before you went to work for him. Before I died, did I tell you how sorry I am for not being there for you when I should have been? You did make that clear, Dad, I said. It's okay. You loved Mom, and you wanted to help others like her. I respect that. Just then, Annie walked in and said, I'm sure glad you made coffee. I can use some. I got up, pulled out a chair between Dad and me, and motioned for her to sit. I'll get your coffee, my dear. I made Annie a cup of coffee, put it in front of her, and sat down again. Annie said, I'd like to see Bruno this morning. The vet opens at 8. I am up for that, I said. I miss having him around. We all grabbed our coffees and went into our respective bedrooms to shower and get ready. I realized that Dad had no clean clothes, so I found some of my clothes that he could wear. Prosto and RM sent. We arrived at the vet a little after 8 and were ushered into one of their exam rooms. I expected Bruno to be in a kennel or something, but he was lying on an exam table. He was on his side with a bandage wrapped around his abdomen. His eyes were open, and his tail started wagging when he saw us, but he didn't lift his head. Annie went to him and petted his head and scratched his ears. She looked at the vet tech who brought us into the room and asked, How is he? The vet tech was a young woman who was probably fresh out of college. She said, He is doing better than expected. He was fortunate the bullet didn't hit any major organs. He did lose a lot of blood, so we are monitoring him closely. He is lightly medicated to reduce pain and keep him from moving too much, but the vet doesn't want to risk any more medication than necessary right now. Annie stayed with Bruno for about 10 minutes, comforting him and letting him know what a good boy he was. Then the vet came in. She was an older woman with gray hair tied behind her in a ponytail. She said, Bruno will be fine. He is a fighter. Thank you, doctor, Annie said. It is always a pleasure to help our dogs in blue, she said. I want you to know that we all heard what happened to you and are beyond relieved that you are okay. Thank you so much, Annie said. After we left the vet, we headed towards Parker's building. On the way, we stopped for breakfast. We talked about how Dad could make Parker Biosystems a force for good. We decided that the ability to record memories would be a good tool for measuring the rate of decline, but the machine that could replace a person's mind had to be destroyed, along with all the research data. We saw 2 men in army uniforms at the gate when we got to Parker's building. One was inside the guardhouse and the other outside. Annie was driving. She rolled down her window and said, What is going on? The soldier said, This business is under lockdown until further notice, only authorized personnel beyond this point. Annie said, I have the owner of the company with me. Dad buzzed his window down and said to the soldier, I'm Scott Parker, the owner of this company. Who's in charge here? That would be General Rafferty, he replied. Well, you tell General Rafferty that I demand to be let into my own building, Dad said. The soldier said, I need to see all your identifications. We all passed our IDs to the soldier, who took them into the guardhouse. He was on the phone for about 30 seconds and then returned and handed back our IDs. He said, You are clear to proceed. He stepped back and motioned to the other soldier, who raised the gate. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for a few Army vehicles and company vehicles. We parked and went through the main entrance. General Rafferty, or the new Scott Parker, was waiting inside for us. Dad said, What the hell is going on here? What are you doing? A couple of soldiers were nearby, so Rafferty said, Let's walk. We walked to the far side of the lobby, and he said, I did what needed to be done. The president and his wife will be here this evening, and tomorrow we will have the White House. Whatever happened here last night is not going to prevent that. Dad looked at me, and I figured going along with him would be wise, at least for a while, so I said, I hope you know what you are doing. Rafferty looked at Dad and asked, Is he one of us now? Yes, Dad said, and she's Gabby. Annie smiled at the general and said, Hello, Scott. I didn't recognize you with all those stars. Hello, Gabby, Rafferty said. Are you three here to support me or oppose me on this? You seem overly cautious. That is not like us. You know as well as I do that I am cautious when caution is called for, Dad said. Maybe you inherited some of the general's recklessness. Whether you agree or not, the presidency will be ours tonight. I've got the third floor sealed off, but you are free to use our office, Rafferty said before walking away. Where is our office? Dad asked. Annie and I both shrugged, and Annie said, Maybe there's a directory. We went to the elevator, and sure enough, there was a directory on the wall. Parker's office was number 501 on the top floor. We got in the elevator, and Annie pressed 5. It was a corner office with windows on two sides. The left windows overlooked a grassy area and the highway behind it. The right windows overlooked a larger grassy area with a row of trees behind it. The office was about twice the size of a typical office, but it wasn't as big or extravagant as I expected. There was a large wooden desk to the right with 2 chairs in front of it. There was a sofa against the left window and a bookcase on each side of the doorway. I got the impression that Parker did real work while he was in his office. I sat at Parker's desk and tapped a key on the keyboard. The screen came up and asked for a fingerprint. I looked around and saw a fingerprint reader to the right of the keyboard. Dad, I need your fingerprint, I said. He came around next to me, placed his finger on the scanner, and the desktop came up. I clicked on a shortcut icon labeled Current Projects. A message came up that read, No network access. There was another icon that read, Security. I clicked on it, and the same message came up, No network access. I said, It looks like Rafferty has turned off our internal network. Why would he do that? Dad asked. I think I know, Annie said. Do you know how you retained some of John's traits, like his badassness? Maybe the same thing happened to Rafferty. Badassness? I said. You know what I mean, she said. I think the general does not enjoy sharing power. He's asserting his dominance over other versions of himself, or at least other perceived versions. That makes sense, I said. So what do we do to get that power back? Right now, I'm not sure, she said. He seems to be holding all the cards. Can we get a message to the president? Dad asked. Have you ever tried to contact the president? I asked. I see your point, he said. It's not like Abraham Lincoln is president, and citizens could just walk into the White House. We threw some ideas around for about 10 minutes, and then the door opened, and a middle-aged woman stepped inside. She was tall and fit, in her late 30s, I guessed. She had shoulder-length, dark brown hair, and wore tight-fitting jeans and a low-cut blouse. She looked at me with disdain, walked over to Dad, and slapped him across the cheek. That's for letting me get killed, she said. How could you do that? We all realized then that she was Gabby reincarnated as Rafferty's wife. It wasn't like I planned it, Dad said. Besides, if you had taken care of him along with his father, none of this would have happened. It was your idea to put him in the body of an Army Ranger, she said. Not the smartest thing you ever did. We had no choice, and you know that, Dad said. I think we need to stop bickering and focus on the prize, I said. She looked at me and said, I should kill you for what you did. Gabby, I said, I thought you loved me. I think we can lose one of you. 3 is more than I can handle, she said. Annie spoke up and said, This one is mine, and you will keep your hands off him. Are you supposed to be me? Gabby said. I don't even know who you are, Annie said. Can we all please work as a team, Dad said. You all need to get used to using your real names. I'll start. I'm Scott Parker. I'm John Thomas, I said. I am Annie Hansen, Annie said. We all looked at Gabby, who said, All right, I'm Marianne Rafferty. I laughed and said, Marianne, not Ginger? I'm glad you were able to keep your sense of humor, John. She put the stress on John. Dad interrupted and said, So what's the plan today? What can we do? Gabby said, Well, the Secret Service should be here soon to sweep the place. There isn't much we can do, but wait. The president and his wife will be in later, around 6, to have their memories recorded. She used air quotes when she said, recorded. I can run the machine, Dad said. My husband will do that, she said. She paused and then said, You know, it's ironic. I waited a long time for you to ask me to marry you, but you never did. The funny thing is, I'm married to you now, and you still have never asked. Annie poked my side and smiled. She said, My Scott asked me. I'm sure she felt an opportunity to get a little jab in at Gabby, so she took it. Gabby said, I have things to do with my husband right now. She made sure she stressed the word husband. She then turned and walked out the door. This audiobook continues on the next video. For more information on this book and others by this author, please visit charleshuss.com.